Hey everyone, welcome to the Agile Workflows in Trello webinar. My name is Brian Servino. I'm the Product Marketing Manager at Trello. And today I'm joined by our Content Manager, Jessica Webb, and Support Specialist, Michael Lebrecht-Jessen. So the goal of this webinar is to show how Agile and Scrum techniques can be applied to a workflow in Trello and go over the three most important Trello boards for achieving these goals. Full disclosure here, I am by no means a Scrum Master. But I do think that anyone that is familiar with Agile and Scrum concepts or looking to get their feet wet will get a lot of useful information from this webinar. So after the presentation, I'll be glad to answer any questions you have about these workflows and how they can be applied to your team. If you have any questions, please type them into the GoToWebinar question box, and I will be addressing as many as possible during the time allotted, with help from Jessica and Michael during the webinar. So you can also email any questions to support@trello.com, and our support team will be glad to answer any questions that you have. Also, I want to let you know that I'll be recording today's webinar, and we'll email a copy of the webinar to all attendees and registrants, and we'll be following up with links to boards you can copy and helpful resources over the next few days. So first, let's quickly go over what Agile is. And I think Trello is a great tool for Agile and Scrum development sprints. And so let's talk about why. So agilemethodology.org defines Agile as stating that Agile approaches help teams respond to Agile approaches help teams respond to unpredictability through incremental, iterative work cadences and empirical feedback. So this is achieved through repeated sprints, which are defined periods of time, usually 1 to 2 weeks, but could be up to 4, where set tasks or user stories, as they're called, are defined and accomplished to constantly be driving more business value. And at the end of each sprint is a sprint retrospective where the positive and negatives are discussed so that future sprints don't have those issues. Or as agilealliance.org puts it, these methodologies emphasize close collaboration between the development team and business stakeholders, frequent delivery of business value, tight self-organizing teams, and smart ways to craft, confirm, and deliver code. So Scrum is perhaps the most popular Agile methodology, and scrumalliance.org defines Scrum is a team-based approach to delivering value to the business. Team members work together to achieve a shared business goal. The Scrum framework promotes effective interaction between team members so the team delivers value to the business. So why then Trello for Scrum and Agile workflows? I think there's 5 really good reasons. Simplicity. Scrum is meant to be a simple and defined process to facilitate work getting done, and Trello handles that exceedingly well. Perspective. At a glance, product owners, team members, and Scrum masters can see who's doing what and what needs to get done. It's also collaborative. Trello is collaborative. Everyone involved in the sprint can communicate and collaborate in real time, no matter where they're located. Flexibility. Trello can easily adapt to whatever workflow works best for your team to get the most done. And also customizable or customization. Trello can integrate the apps that your team relies on most, saving time and energy since everyone knows where to access files, documents, and links all in one centralized location, essentially making Trello a platform for your entire project. So anyway, let's dig into 3 key Trello boards for your Agile Scrum workflows with your team. Those being the Sprint board, the Retrospective board, and the Product Roadmap board. Okay, I'm just going to exit this presentation and hop into my boards here in Trello. So the first board is the Sprint board. On this Sprint board, we've kept it as simple as possible, really with only 4 main lists: the backlog, the sprint backlog, the in-progress list, and a weekly done list for each sprint, which we've titled for the end of the week. And as you can see, going back to previous weeks for each weekly sprint. Now, I just want to let you know, you can set up lists however you want. You can include additional lists like resources maybe at the beginning for any commonly accessed documents, a blocked list for any items that are currently blocked in development via other means, a QA list for quality assurance stages and testing, or just a done list instead of a weekly list. Really, whatever works best for the team. But I recommend starting off with something simple so that everyone on your team has a grasp on how the board works, and it keeps the workflow visually clear, and then build from there if need be. So for instance, I can double click between two lists and just add a QA list if maybe we want to add a testing phase to our sprint. But like I said, I want to keep this kind of simple. I'm just going to archive this list. So let me go over the 4 lists we have here. The first one is the backlog. And the backlog contains all of the tasks that need to be accomplished and implemented. Items can remain in the backlog until they are prioritized by a stakeholder, or until the task or user story, as they are often referred to in Agile development, is developed enough to become an actionable item. You have next the sprint backlog, and these are the tasks that are ready to be completed during the next sprint, are moved from the backlog list to the sprint backlog. So cards can be prioritized by the product owner by dragging the most important cards to the top of the list. So for instance, maybe we decide that this needs to be reprioritized. We can drag and drop. The product owner can drag and drop cards on this list to show priority. So the in progress list is, when a developer starts a task, they can drag the card to this list. For instance, if I want to start working on this task, I can drag a card to the in progress list, and can add myself to the card to signify that I am going to start working on that task. So now if you have a separate test team, so as I mentioned, so now I'm assigned to this task. So what I can do is I can work on this task, and let's say it's time for the QA stage. One easy thing I can do is I can bring over someone from my testing team, and I can assign them this card as well. And they can test the code. If they find a bug, they can always mention me or any other dev in a comment to pass the card back to me, and then remove themselves from that card for when they want to remove themselves from the card, so that I can go fix the bug, and then when I want to have them QA it again, I can add them back to the card. Well, like I said, you could also have a separate QA list. And instead, in this process, what I could do is drag cards over here for testing, add my tester. If everything looks good and it's ready to be shipped, this can be moved over to the done list. If not, though, the tester could always move it back to the in progress list, and then I'll fix the bug, and then we can get it tested again. So there's a couple different workflows around how you can do tasks that are in progress. Finally, as I mentioned, we have the weekly sprint lists. So tasks that are completed are moved to the list for the week of the current sprint. And having a separate list for each sprint really helps product owners and stakeholders easily see what has been accomplished during each sprint. For each sprint, you could create a new list where completed cards for that sprint would be moved to. So for the next sprint, for next week, I can simply just create for August 16th, 2016, and then we have a timeline of everything that's been released in each sprint. So that's basically a high-level overview of the lists. Of course, so much of the information within the tasks is going to be involved in the Trello cards. And so I'm going to dig into a lot of the features on Trello cards and show how they apply to this process. So really, cards represent tasks to be accomplished by a developer, and they can be considered user stories, and you can outline the tasks required to build a new feature. So really, card titles should be, this is the card title, and really card titles should be short and concise, allowing anyone on the team to quickly scan the board and understand exactly what the task is. This is not where you want to put lots of information about the card. If you want to add additional information for a card, that's the description field, which is right here. And as you can see with some of these other cards, you can get very detailed with how the description works. So the description allows the product owner or stakeholder to add more information to a card, specifying the details of what is to be developed or designed, and define the goals or outline the steps to do so. So as you can see here, Trello supports Markdown formatting, which can make card descriptions easier to read. And when you're editing a card description, you can look at formatting help to see exactly how you can apply Markdown formatting to your card descriptions. So members should be added to cards when they're assigned that task. And depending on the structure of the team and the task, multiple members can be added to a card. If you're going to have multiple devs working on a project together, you might have tasks broken down for each individual person, really whatever works best for you. But you can just click the members button and you can just select someone to add to the card. It's also possible to just drag and drop a member onto a card from your menu. So labels provide additional visual information on cards, and it's also really great because they can be filtered, as can members and due dates, which I'll get into next. For Agile workflows, cards can be labeled when blocked or when bugs are discovered in the QA process. Labels can also be used to signify if a task is urgent or to categorize types of tasks, maybe where that task fits into the product. So what I can do is I can create a label here for bugs, save that, and I can click to apply this label to this card. And I know my team can quickly see that there's during testing a bug was discovered, or maybe a customer had discovered a bug in something that we had already shipped, and they reported it, and now during the sprint we want to fix that bug. The uses are endless. But what's really cool is you can filter the labels. So if I want to see what cards are blocked, I can just filter for blocked cards. I can filter for bugs. I can see what's been verified in our staging and what's been shipped, etc. So labels are really useful like that as well. And while I'm actually talking about filtering, it's also really great with filtering. You can see exactly what your tasks are. You can also see what tasks have not been assigned to anyone yet in case they need to be delegated. Or just if you're a product owner and maybe you want to make sure that someone's not burdened with too much work, you can filter for those specific people and make sure if they need tasks redistributed. So that's another really great use of the filter. Getting back into the cards though, for tasks that require multiple parts, checklists can be created so that each subtask can be listed and checked off as it's completed. So the status bar indicates what percent of the checklist items have been completed. And that's really convenient because you can also see on the badge of the card how many checklist items have been completed. So a stakeholder or a product owner can at a glance see exactly how far along this task is. Some other really great features about checklists is if a task in a checklist, like a subtask, gets too big, you can actually convert that checklist item to a card, its own card. So maybe now, as you can see, we have this new checklist that this item is now a Trello card, and maybe it's something that can be expanded upon. Maybe we realize that this task is going to be much larger and require more resources than expected. So we can go in and create this as its own task that's separate from the card that it came from. What's also really cool is that while Trello does not support nested cards, other cards related to the main card, like child cards, can easily be referenced on a parent card by copying and pasting the URL to the child card into a checklist item. So let me just show you how that could work. And the scenario for this might be like maybe you have your subtasks for your checklist items are things that need to get completed before, say, this task, let the server choose the default name task, can get finished. So what I could do is I can always paste the URL to the card in here. And I can, let's say this is a top priority. So now when I want to look and see what needs to be done for this this card for this task, I can click this link and hop right into that card that needs to be completed first. And then once this card moves over and it's all done, I can go back to my card and I can check this off and keep going through until everything's checked off on here. And the task is done, and I can drag it over to my done list. So due dates are really useful. While tasks can be prioritized, as I mentioned before, by dragging them to the top of a list, due dates can also be used to help establish maybe what cards need to be completed before others. So when a due date is added to a card, any member of that card will receive a notification. So they'll get updated. If we need this done by the 12th, any member will get a notification for that, and they'll also get a reminder 24 hours before that card is due. What's really cool is you can view due dates in a calendar view, which I'll get to in a moment. So oftentimes, screenshots and bug reports, design mockups, or documents need to be referenced during the development process. And so product owners and devs can easily attach files to cards directly from their computer or from popular cloud storage services like Google Drive, Dropbox, and OneDrive. And attaching files from cloud storage services means that the files will retain the permission settings in the cloud storage service that were set in the cloud storage service for additional security. So if perhaps your Google Drive doc that you attached to a card had, only members of your team could view it or only can comment, if you have the link, by attaching that Google Drive file to this card, those security and sharing permissions will retain, remain the same. So I'm just going to show you real quick if I want to attach a screenshot. Just hit open, and looks like I already have it attached to this card. But as you can see, that's one way to do it. You can also just simply drag and drop files right onto a card, which is really convenient. And as you can see, this has just been added right now. The same works with links. For instance, if I want to make a note about a web page, you can also really easily attach links to cards to reference them later, which is super convenient. Anyways, that's just a few ways that attachments can come in handy. Another good feature for cards is subscribing. So if you are a member of a card, as you can see I am, you're automatically subscribed to a card. But let's go to a card here where I'm not a member. If I subscribe to the card, say I'm a stakeholder or a product owner, basically, stakeholders, they can stay updated as specific cards progress from the backlog to the done list by subscribing to cards. And the benefit here is that by subscribing to a card as a stakeholder, instead of adding yourself to a card, it keeps clear who is assigned to the task, as opposed to, if I'm the stakeholder and I add myself as well, this might create some visual confusion as to who is actually getting this task done. So unless you're assigned to the task, I'd recommend, if you want to stay updated on the actions on a card and as it progresses and gets completed, I'd recommend subscribing to the card. The last thing on the card back that's really useful is commenting. Just if you want to have any dialogue between the team, this all happens in real time. And what's really useful is that you can @mention someone. What's the status on this? why is it blocked, for instance. And as you can see, this will add the comment to the card, but by mentioning Andre, like this notifies him as well. And so he'll receive a notification in email, wondering maybe to give me some more information as to why this card is blocked right now. Maybe if it's an emergency and I need to, find out. But it's also, comments are a great way to get feedback and add information from the team. Some other really cool little tricks is you can also do @card to mention all the members on a card at once. And if you want to rope in the entire board, you can do @board in a comment. And that'll notify everyone on the board. Of course, I hope that if you're leaving comments for everyone on the board, it's more useful than just saying hi. So really quick, before I dig into some deeper features, I just want to go over maybe some sprint board best practices. While we encourage teams to find the workflows that work best for them, here are just a couple tips that might help for smoother sprints. You should always have a dedicated product owner that is in charge of leading each weekly sprint. So they should be in charge of establishing the scope of each sprint and which cards should be moved from the backlog to that week's current sprint or the sprint backlog. This person should also be the admin in the board, as you can see with this icon over here. You can signify that by making this person the admin. Another way you can do this is if you want to, you create a card and you could say product owner Ryan. And then you can, the product owner can add themselves to the card. Sometimes you might want to put a bunch of labels to really draw attention to it. If you feel like this way, if anyone's adding anything to the backlog or has any questions about the upcoming sprints, any stakeholders or anyone on the team has any questions, they know exactly who to go to. So there's just kind of two ways to just make it clear to your team who's in charge of making sure that items move from backlogs to the sprint backlog, and then get worked on with each sprint. So also at the end of each sprint, there should be something that is shippable, and that's something that the product owner should consider. It's also maybe worthwhile to consider inviting any stakeholders to observe the sprint board so that they can see what progress has been made. So you can always just add any member. If it's maybe an external client or anything, you can add them by their email address. To the board and invite them. With Trello Business Class, you could actually, stakeholders and anyone external to the sprint process can be added to boards as observers by clicking this. This is a business class feature. And basically what happens if they're an observer, you can give them only permissions to comment on cards, maybe to provide feedback or ask questions. And you can allow them to vote on cards, which I'll get into in a moment. But this is just a great way to safely invite someone to a board where they're not gonna mess up your flow. Another thing is you might want to consider setting up a basic point system in Trello by adding numbers to cards in parentheses, as you can see here. Points are estimates that measure the degree of difficulty for a task and are often based on the Fibonacci sequence, which I know sounds all big and technical and mathematic, but it's basically, that's the sequence is 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, etc. It's basically the last two digits added to each other in a sequence. So 1 plus 2 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5, etc. And this is basically adding points like this can be a quick way to make sure your team is not overloaded with work during a sprint. The reason for a nonlinear numbering system like the Fibonacci sequence is because time estimates or difficulty estimates are very hard to make. And the bigger the task, the more uncertainty revolves around that task. And so by using a numbering system that is nonlinear, it recognizes the difficulty of a task without producing like a false level of confidence for the specific level of difficulty. So anyway, I'm going to share a useful Chrome extension in a moment that can help this process. Also, as I just mentioned, product owners should balance the workload of a sprint based on the amount of points for each card. And this will become easier once a team has a few sprints under their belt, so don't get discouraged. A better sense of the number of points that can typically be completed in a sprint by your team will develop. Also, during a scrum or a sprint, cards should constantly be moving all the time as tasks move from the sprint backlog to in progress to QA if you have that to done. Daily stand-ups, which are quick meetings with the team, are essential to this process, where each member of the team says what they did yesterday, what they're doing today, and if there are any tasks that are blocked that need to be addressed. Also, every sprint should have a review. So you'd want to create a card for each week's sprint list. And in that, just put what we got done. Do we need to adjust anything? And do we need to update the backlog? So that's a lot of stuff. Don't worry, we'll be sending out some, sending out some more information about this stuff over in some follow-up emails. But just some things to consider. So real quick, I want to go over some power-ups and integrations that will help your sprints. So there are many ways that Trello can be customized to improve your team's sprints and workflows with power-ups, browser extensions, and third-party integrations. And so power-ups add extra functionality to Trello boards by enabling additional features as well as integrations with other apps and services. So every Trello account comes with 3 free power-ups, a calendar, card aging, and voting. And then business class and enterprise teams get even more power-ups that integrate with popular apps and services like GitHub, Slack, Google Drive, and more. So there are also a number of browser extensions and third-party integrations that can help Agile and Scrum teams. But let me just, as I mentioned, there's a lot of these power-ups. Let me just cover a few that I think are most essential, starting with the 3 power-ups that come with every Trello account, voting, the calendar, and card aging. So as you can see, to enable a power-up, you could just click Enable. As you see, I've already enabled the voting power-up, where I can set who's allowed to vote. And I can allow my observers to vote, my stakeholders. And so the voting allows stakeholders to upvote features that interest them the most and help prioritize future sprints. So voting can take place either on this board, on the product roadmap, or both, depending on how your team is set up. So real quickly, you see right here that there's 4 votes for this card. I can see who voted for it. If it's checked off in green, that means I voted for it. But I can easily vote for a card by clicking vote. Or I can also just hover my mouse over a card and hit the V key. Just a super convenient way to add votes. Then once you have votes on cards, we can move cards around to prioritize them based on votes. So as I mentioned earlier, due dates on cards. For that, we have the calendar power-up. If you're applying due dates to cards, the calendar power-up allows you to see those cards in a calendar view. And this kind of provides a clear perspective for which cards are due when over the course of the sprint. And you can view those in a weekly view if that helps as well, depending on how many cards are on the, this way you can view that sprint for that week easily and see where those cards line up as far as due dates. What's also really convenient is that the calendar power-up, every board with a calendar has an iCal feed. So by enabling that, you have a personal iCal feed, which you can import into any third-party calendar like Outlook or Google or Apple, any calendar app that takes an iCal feed, and you can import that, and that way you can see all the calendars from all your boards in one location with all your other tasks and everything else going on in your life. The last power-up I want to show, fortunately I can't really demo so well right now, is called card aging, but I can show you a picture of it. And basically, by enabling card aging on your board, as you can see right down here. By enabling card aging on your board, cards that have not had any activity will fade out, or in this instance, turn to a kind of faded looking pirate map over time. So the great thing about card aging is that it can be useful in surfacing cards in the backlog that might be falling by the wayside and could require some reprioritization. So those are 3 power-ups that come with all Trello accounts. I'm going to hop over to this copy of this my board real quick here, where I'm going to show some business class power-ups that I've enabled. The first one is the GitHub Powerup. So with the GitHub Powerup, product managers can, in a single glance, they can look at a Trello board and see what commits have passed their checks. You can see which code has been merged. Developers can easily access the code they need and coordinate with the rest of the team by attaching branches, commits, and issues and pull requests directly to Trello cards. From this, you can easily just hop right into GitHub and start working. And as you can see, you can attach branches, commits, issues, and pull requests. You can have multiple repos connected with the Powerup via GitHub. So you can just set that up right here, and you could add any repos that you want to GitHub. So that's a really convenient way to access your code or to access any issues that are happening in GitHub if you're in GitHub all the time. So another one is Slack. These days it kind of feels like these days with Slack, it feels like we're kind of going through a revolution in team communication as more teams go remote and the office landscape changes. So with the Slack Powerup, it's possible to seamlessly bring your Trello cards directly into your Slack team for brainstorming sessions or for quick feedback. So what I can do here is I've associated this sprint board with my Slack sprint channel. And if I want to talk about something, maybe in Slack with my team, I can just easily send that card right to our sprint channel. And if I pull down my Slack window, you can see this card is right here. Anyone on my team can jump right into the Trello board. And also, if you have the Slack app, the Trello for Slack app installed in Slack, you get all these other cool features. For instance, these interactive buttons. So any one member of my team can easily, add a due date or join a card or add labels or even like add a comment to a card right from Slack. Oh, sorry. There's a whole lot of, oh, you know what? I don't actually have it. I think I need to reauthorize my reauthorize Trello with this account. But basically, with these slash commands that exist, you can send comments, add comments to cards, join cards, and everything right from Slack. That's via the Slack in the App Store in Slack, the Trello app for Slack. So that's a really cool thing you can do, coordinating between the Powerup in Trello and the app that exists in Slack. I'm just going to move that out of the way. Another cool thing is with the Slack app is if you maybe there's something, a card you have a blocker on or something you want to talk about at tomorrow's stand-up, you can send a reminder to yourself in Slack. So I can remind myself in one day. And now Slackbot's going to remind me about this, this card that I want to bring up during our next stand-up. And finally, by attaching a Slack channel to a room, anyone on your team, they don't have to think about where they need to go to communicate with the team. You can connect the sprint channel to your room, and right here I can, hop right into a Slack channel, which is super convenient. So those are some of the fun ways that you can use Slack with your dev team. I also want to show the Google Drive Powerup. We have Powerups for a lot of cloud storage apps that the Powerups add extra functionality than just your basic attachments here. So Google Drive, Dropbox, and Box Powerups, they all let you attach important files to Trello cards. But they also, with the Powerups enabled, it provides additional data, like when the file was created or last edited, and by whom. As you can see here, I have actually attached a Google Drive folder. So by attaching a folder from Google Drive, I can view all the items in the folder right from my Trello card. I can hop into Drive and check out this mock-up for a new website design, etc. It's also really cool with the Google Drive Powerup. You can also create documents, drawings, slides, sheets, and folders. So if I want to create a new document, I can do so. And as you see, the file is named after the card. Shows when it was created, modified, and I can hop right into Google Docs and start working on that if I need to document anything about my process. Right now, I'm just going to show the Google Drive Powerup. The Dropbox and Box ones act in similar ways of showing this kind of information. Google Drive also has more value in a way in that it you can attach folders and also create files right from the back of a Trello card. So next up, for managing cases, tickets, and feature requests, we have Powerups for popular services like FogBugs, Help Scout, Zendesk, and Intercom. So to save time, I'm just going to demo the Zendesk Powerup. But I just want to make a note that each of these Powerups works in a very similar fashion. So as you can see in this card, the Zendesk Powerup allows you to attach tickets and views directly to a Trello card. So this is great for keeping track of bugs and feature requests. And tickets attached to cards, as you can see, display the name of the ticket, a preview of the body of the ticket, who the ticket is assigned to, and when the ticket was last updated. You can also attach Zendesk views to cards to get a higher level perspective on the number of tickets open in your group, how many tickets you have, and more, which can provide valuable insight to stakeholders and product owners. So if any stakeholder wants to see why this customer really wants this feature, they can hop right into Zendesk and access that ticket. It's also really convenient, as you can see right here. Card fronts will have a badge displaying the number of tickets attached to each card. So this can be helpful if you want to see at a glance, maybe which user stories to prioritize for the next sprint, because there's been a lot of feature requests. You can see right over here, there's like FogBugs. So, here's the FogBugs badge. And just as I mentioned before, these are very similar in that they provide, information about what the case is about, whether it's active, when it was last worked on, and you can always access these cases directly from the back of a Trello card. So burn down charts, cumulative flow diagrams, and Gantt charts are all essential ways to visualize your team's progress during a sprint. And right now we have Powerups for Screenful, Trello, and Elegant. And so each of these Powerups creates a visual dashboards displaying key insights from the progress of your sprint board, and they're accessible directly from your Trello board. So to save time, I am going to just share the Screenful Powerup dashboard. And this is a board that the Screenful team created for me, which is really awesome. And if anyone from Screenful is watching this webinar, I thank you very much. But like I said, all these Powerups kind of work in a similar fashion. So if you're already using one of the other two apps, Trello or Elegant. But basically with your board set up, the Powerup enabled, you can click Screenful. And of course I need to log in. I must have got logged out this morning. Hang on one second, folks. Thanks for your patience while I quickly log into this. All right, we're back. Sorry about that pause. So as you can see, we have the sprint burn down, the cumulative flow, our release forecast. We can show completed tasks. And as you can see, this is cool because it's all based off of labels. And we get just a whole overview of all the lead time and everything. These are really easy to set up. All you have to do is, as you can see, you can map these are the lists on the board. And so, I can drag from open tasks to in progress tasks, and just set up so this way Screenful knows what tasks are open, what's in progress, and what's done, so it can form these burn down charts. And there you can see how many tasks are open, how many are in progress, and how many are done as it's reflected on this board. So super cool, super useful if your team relies on burn down charts or cumulative flow diagrams. Once again, thank you to the Screenful team for creating that for me. As I mentioned before, daily stand-ups are an essential part of a sprint. And but as more and more teams go remote, it's becoming more important to have the tools available to still hold effective daily stand-ups. And so whether your team uses Google Hangouts, Join Me, or Appear In, any of these power-ups allow you to set a dedicated place for your team to go for daily stand-ups and employ a remote first policy. And so this also is great for retrospectives with a remote team because you can access the meeting room directly from your Trello board in a single click. So for right now, as you can see, I have the Appear In Powerup enabled, and I can just click this link, hop in Appear In chat, and hey world, welcome to my messy home office. But my team knows exactly where to go for every stand-up and retrospective. So anyway, that's some of the most important power-ups for any dev team. If you want to learn more about business class, check out trello.com/business-class. There's also some really cool third-party plugins and browser extensions. I just want to go over real quick. Scrum for Trello is a browser extension that lets you add story points to cards. And points can be added to cards between parentheses, and Scrum for Trello automatically displays this number on the Trello card, and it calculates the total number of points in each list, and then adds that to the top of the list. And Scrum for Trello also always updates in real time, so even when you're moving cards across lists. There's also Kanban WIP for Trello. WIP stands for work in progress. So this is another Chrome browser extension that helps set a work in progress limit for lists. And so you can add a limit in brackets to your list name, and when the amount of cards in that list meets that number, the list turns yellow. And if you go over the limit, the list will turn red. So this way you can make sure that you don't have your team's not overburdened with too much work that might cause bottlenecks. And finally, Burn Down for Trello is an integration that allows you to create burn down charts for Trello boards, similar to the power-ups mentioned before if you're using Burn Down for Trello. So, wow, time is really flying by in this webinar. I apologize for providing maybe too much information. I'm just going to quickly go over these other two boards and hopefully have some time to get some Q&A in. So next up is the Sprint Retrospective board. And so from the Agile Manifesto, a retrospective for development teams are defined as at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. Or to paraphrase our product manager, Jessica Barnett, using Trello to run retrospectives creates an environment that is open and encouraging to all participants. So it places introverts and extroverts on the same level. Everything is written down and easily accessible by every team member, creating a shared history of every retrospective. Also, everyone gets to write down their own thoughts on a card and then read it out loud, making sure that no one's ideas are paraphrased by the retrospectives facilitators. And finally, it facilitates a democratic process where the most important issues are discussed in depth by the entire team, and action items are created to address those issues. So this board is based on retrospectives that she runs with her team at regular intervals after sprints. And the board consists of 4 lists. Basically, you want to cover what went well, what needs to change, questions and discussions, and action items. So for what went well, this is a list for all the positive aspects of the sprint. People to thank or recognize for doing hard work and the parts of the process that went well. The needs to change, this list is for anything that people think needs to be changed, improved, stopped doing, or have complaints about. The questions and discussion list is for anything that people want to talk about that don't fit into the other two lists. And finally, the action items. These are cards are moved to this list as they're discussed, and action items that need to be addressed and implemented around them are decided and assigned. So basically a quick overview of how to structure a retrospective. Retrospectives should start with everyone joining the meeting, being added to essentially an empty retrospective board. For this example, I'm showing what one would look like, during a retrospective. But the board should be empty, and you should just have these 4 empty lists. So the first thing that should be done is everyone adds cards to the board in either of the first 3 lists, depending on the subject to be discussed. And the great thing about running a retrospective in Trello and giving time for everyone to add their cards at the same time is that introverts will, feel comfortable since they can think and then write, and it'll prevent extroverts from dominating the conversation if everyone is simply speaking while one person is documenting. Team members should add themselves to cards they've added to the retrospective board so that the meeting facilitator can go through each list and let the person that created the card read their card themselves. After a set amount of time, typically 3 to 5 minutes, the meeting facilitator can ask if anyone needs any more time. And if not, the team should go through each card on each list, and cards are read aloud by the person that created the card. Anyone else on the team is encouraged to ask questions or request clarification. So when, and you can also add more information to a description here in the card, if the card title doesn't sum it all up. When all the cards have been read aloud, it's time for team members to vote on the cards that they think are most important. And so what facilitators should make sure to go into the Powerups menu and, already enabled it, enable the voting. And then all team members can quickly scan through the cards and just hover over a card and press V to vote on a card. And so after a few minutes of voting, everyone should be ready for discussion. And this is an important process because it makes sure that what the team deems most important to discuss is discussed during the retro. So starting with the cards with the most number of votes in either the needs to change or questions and discussion, because in theory what went well shouldn't need to be discussed, just championed. The facilitator will drag the cards with the most votes into the action items and read out loud. And the person who created the card will speak to it briefly, and then the conversation should naturally open up for the room to discuss. Generally, the most important part of this process is to drive out action items for each card that can be done to improve the issue. When an action item has been established for a card, you can always move it to a done list, or you can just keep it on this list until the next retrospective and start each new retrospective going over the action items from the previous retrospective. If you've solved that action item and the problem, you can always archive a card to remove from the list to recognize that it's been taken care with. And then any action items that remain, you might want to rediscuss. One quick tip also is to, if you want to save time, you can always set up a template retrospective board with empty lists and copy that board for each retrospective. So I'm just going to quickly show you. I can copy this board, call it Sprint Retros template. I don't want to keep the cards because I don't want all the cards from the previous retrospective to be on there. But as you see, now I have my template laid out with my list ready to go. And for future retrospectives, I can just copy it, and I can do 8, 9, 16 retro and create that, and now invite my team to it, and everyone can then join the retrospective. Finally, the time remaining, real quick, is the product roadmap. And once again, we'll be sending out links to copies of all these boards so you can look them over in depth. But the product roadmap or product backlog is a place to keep track of all of the features, ideas, or requests from stakeholders and customers, and often at a higher level than the individual tasks to build a feature. So once again, this board can be set up however works best for your team. This one has ideas, researching requirements, estimating, and sprint candidates. Another way to set up this board could be a backlog list, followed by maybe a list for the next 3 quarters to plan out the product roadmap. So just going into what a card can consist of maybe on your product roadmap, cards can include a description for the feature, including any feature specs and motivation from a business perspective for creating the feature. Links to any documentation should be included on the card or attached to the card, and checklists can be created to track the tasks or user stories to build that feature. And so, you can always, as I mentioned earlier, reference, if you start building out tasks on a sprint board, you can always copy and paste those cards into this checklist. And then as those tasks are completed in a sprint, you can check them off. And, once all these are done, then this feature would be considered, built and shipped. So basically, as cards are prioritized, they can be moved. They can be prioritized in the list. And once again, you can enable voting on this list so that people can vote on cards for, based on features they want most. And cards can move their way across for, researching so that the product owner can evaluate what needs to get done for the design, development, and implementing the feature. And then it can move to the estimating list where the difficulty is estimated. And, finally, it can move into the sprint candidates list. And so once a feature has been implemented in a sprint, in the sprint card, the card on the backlog board here can be archived to remove it from the list. So if we finish this task, I can archive it. And of course, any card that is archived can always be retrieved for reference. So I can just hop right into my board's archive. And if I need to reference this card, or if I want to send it back to the board, maybe because we need to work on it more, or just something comes up, that is always an option. And so, okay, wow, that wraps up. Sorry, I kind of rushed through the last one a little bit. I know we're running out of time. But that wraps up my presentation on how teams can use Trello for the Agile and Scrum workflows. I apologize. Normally, I try and aim for a really lengthy Q&A session, but there was a bit of content to cover here. So we have a few minutes. Maybe try and answer some high-level questions for everyone. But if you have any questions that we didn't get to address during this webinar, just feel free to email support@trello.com because we'd like to spend the time to, just answer questions as in-depth as possible for you. I'd feel bad rushing through any of your questions. And we also have some folks on our team that have a lot of support, a lot of experience working with Scrum and Agile workflows that can help out providing more in-depth questions. Once again, you should receive a copy of the recording of this webinar in the next few days. And please feel free to share it with the rest of your team. We'll also be sending out more resources like links to these boards and the Powerups and the plugins. So you'll be able to check all those out on your own time. So thanks everyone for taking the time to join me. And let me see if I can just kind of get to a few questions real quick while we still have some time. Oh, so someone, this is a great question. Someone asked, how do you add, where is that? How do you add emojis to lists? So what you can do is, specifically on a Mac, that's what I'm using. For Windows, I'm not sure exactly. But you just hit Control-Command-Space, and it brings up the emoji selector. And then you can pick that emoji. You can also add them to cards as well. You can also, copy and paste an emoji and maybe from a resource for emojis. Let's see. Someone asked, can you reuse lists? Yep. So I can totally copy lists. as you can see, and it copies all the cards in the list. You can also, if you don't want all the cards in a list, this is useful. Let's say if you're copying a list that maybe you're going to redo certain tasks every week. So you maybe just want to make a copy of that list every week. And then you'll have the cards. You can have a template, list that you copy. Although if you're just going to make a new list, I'd recommend just kind of double clicking and in between two lists and making that list. Or you can click add a list and list, and then you can always drag it around to where you want on your board. Someone said showing the nesting of cards. Yeah, basically what you can do is, like say on this roadmap, maybe there's a step in a sprint. Maybe there's a user story like this card that is a part of this larger feature I want to build. I can just, let me not erase one. I can just add a checklist item and paste that in. And as you can see, it automatically pulls in the card's title, and I can just quickly hop to that card whenever I want. And then once those tasks are completed, you can mark them off and make sure that every user story or task that's related to the feature has been shipped and is released. Let's see, real quick. What do you do when the number of in-progress and sprint backlogs are quite long so that there's a loss of ability to make the board visually useful? I think one thing is you might want to consider instead of having this backlog list here, just having a separate backlog board where you can really prioritize stuff in a more visual way. Maybe you could set up your lists based on priority, you could set up lists for great ideas or, impossible right now, would love to have, but don't have the resources, definitely not. These could be different lists. And you could break up your backlog into something that's more visible like that. Instead of having a list that might just get too long to the point that you lose perspective on what your backlog is. And by having a separate backlog board that's set up in that way where you can prioritize across lists, that means that cards that are really high priority can be moved into future sprints. But if cards that you're never going to get to can be archived or just left on that list out of view from your sprint list so they're not distracting. And if there's a card that is on your backlog list for maybe something you'd like to get to do when you have more resources, you can always just move that card to a high priority and then ship it off into a sprint. So I hope that helps you think. I hope that answers your question on how you might be able to better tame your backlogs, your backlog lists. As far as in progress goes, I think that's just really most important. Just the product owner should be making sure that there's not too much, in the in-progress list at one time, then not more than the team can handle. They should always be managing the expectations of the stakeholders and the capabilities of the team to make sure that, within each sprint, the work that needs to get done is getting done. Let's see, it's 3:00 right now. Maybe I'll just go 5 more minutes if that's cool with anyone. And if you have to go, hop off. I completely understand. But there's just a couple more questions here I can address. So let's see. What if two people add the same task card but are not aware of it? The wording is different. Is there a way to send a warning or alert that something similar is already on the board? No, there's no way to, by default, send a warning if we have two cards that are these are very similar tasks. I think that should be the job of the product owner to be making sure that when cards are added to a backlog, if need be, maybe you need to combine two cards. So what you can do is I could take this duplicate card and I could, reference it, say, see also. And now I can add that card, and I can always just archive this card. But if I want to reference that card, the card that's archived, I can always pull it up and get any information off of it. That's probably the best way to handle things, is just to make sure that the person that is in charge of the board is keeping on top of that stuff. Let's see. someone asked about the WIP limits, the work in progress limits. And as I said, Trello itself doesn't enforce that, but you can add this Kanban WIP for Trello extension, which will help enforce those WIP limits. Let's see. How can we represent the user stories in Trello, and how can we show that a task is part of a certain user story? That one might be a little bit more in depth than I have time for since I'm over time. So if you had that question, and just feel free to email us at support@trello.com, and we'll be glad to go in depth about how you can, best practices for representing user stories in Trello, and how to show that task is part of this certain user story. I think I kind of covered that here, basically, but perhaps not. And also, let's see. Someone asked, really quick, how I can turn a checklist item into a card again, because I went over it fast. I apologize for my fast New York speaking. But let's go back to this card. If I want to turn this, if I have a checklist item that I want to turn into a card, I can click the item and click Convert to Card. And as you can see, the card has now been added to the bottom of my list. And it says right here where it's converted from, and I can then reference that card, which is super handy. Just like one more quick question here. Is it possible to assign a due date to a checklist task within a card? No, there's no way currently to assign a due date to a checklist item in a card. A hack for that might be just putting due, let's say 8/9, and then maybe I could do due 8/7. And now on the card itself, for a due date, maybe what I would want to do is I'll set I don't want anyone to be working on Sunday here over the weekend, but I'll set the due date for August 7th, which is the first date due on the card. And then once that's been hit, I can check it off, and then we can just adjust the due date for the next task to be August 9th. And this way, as we're going through each item on the checklist that needs to be hit in a specific due date, I can make sure that there's whoever is being assigned this task is receiving a notification for when that checklist item needs to be finished. And then once I verify that it's been completed, as the product owner, I can then adjust the due date on the Trello card. That's probably your best way to do that. So I guess that's probably about all the time right now. Sorry I ran a few minutes over, but thank you for everyone that stuck around. And once again, we'll be sending out a copy of this recording. If there's any questions that didn't get answered, just email support@trello.com, and we'll be glad to answer those for you. Thanks so much, everyone, and I hope you have a great rest of the week leading into the weekend. Take care.